Hey guys, thanks for joining me here at this late hour. My name is Netta, and I thought to come on today to talk about the time that I realized I had lost my love or my love for love. So, if that's a topic that interests you and how it propelled me to get into business and things of that sort, then stick with me. Anywho, I remember it was like 5 o'clock in the morning. I have 6 siblings, so 6 siblings inside of a 1-story house. I was the second oldest, so it kind of worked out where my older brother would get up, and I would get up, and then it kind of like worked down the steps. But I remember the sun hadn't quite risen yet, so the house was a little dark still and still a little quiet because, of course, like we had to be in and out the bathroom as fast as possible. So I was like, me and my older brother were like one of the only ones dressed. And I was in the kitchen just grabbing whatever and to eat for the morning before I got to school. And I remember the phone ringing. Bring, bring, bring. I'm like, at 5 o'clock in the morning, no one ever calls that early. So I'm walking toward the phone. It rings another time and it rings another time. And by the time I got to the phone, guess what? The person on the other line had hung up. So I'm like, couldn't be anything that important. So I grab all of my things, everyone else is getting ready for school. And I don't like being late for things. I've never liked being late for things. And me and my mom kind of butt heads with that. But I was in the car waiting, literally in the passenger side. And my sister, she's always been like petite. She's like a red bone. Like you could see in my skin, like my undertone is white. It's olive, as they say in makeup. But my sister's undertone is red. So my sister comes out and she is crying, just tears pouring down her face. And my younger sister is the sweetest girl ever. And I'm just getting emotional talking about it. But she comes running out to the passenger side. And I remember the steps were wooden. So it's just like clunk, 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 clunk. And I had I remember having a phone. It had to be like 7th grade year. And I had like a semi-functional phone. Like I obviously didn't have any minutes. I was just like playing like Snake or something on there. And I look up and she's coming over, clunk, clunk, clunk. Tears pouring down her face. And she has like her eyes covered. And I was like, what's going on? And she said, Granny passed away in her sleep last night. And at that moment, our whole world came crashing down. So obviously no one went to school in that moment. One of the things that we had to do, they gave us the opportunity to do, was to go view the body, because she had a DNR. So she had been like dealing with so much that she still chose to be present for her family. So at that point, everyone was aware of her DNR. So she wasn't like resuscitated. I'm not even sure who found her or what they found her with, but my mom always shares the best stories because she told me the night before, yeah, I had just spoken to her and she was just, getting prepared for the night. She always had her moo, going through a particular routine. And, she was just glad because she told her she loved her and things of that sort. But my mom had this blue expedition. And in that expedition, the expedition used to roll. Like everybody used to roll in the expedition. But maybe it was before that, but I do remember it being an SUV. And if you guys knew me from when I was younger, my mother was a single mom. So like we had a stepdad for a minute and this and that happened, but a lot of the support came from my grandmother because my grandmother understood what it meant to be alone and things of that sort. And that's just like what family does. So we lived in Dale City and my family is from the east side of Oklahoma City. So those of you that live there, you know where the east side is. Those of you that don't live there, let's just say the drive was like 15, 20 minutes. And I honestly don't remember the drive. All I remember is pulling up to the curb and not being able to park in front of her house because there was so many people already there. So many people just wandering around. So much sadness. So much loss, like helplessness. And my grandmother's house, like she owned the house. So it's such a wonderful feat at her age. And all I can remember was being young and kind of tall, but not really. And just really wanted to be as tall as the ceiling. And as I grew, I was almost to like the ceiling fans because, the generations before us are so much shorter. So the ceiling didn't need to be super high for it to be super high. But I remember walking into the house. The floor was hardwood. It would creak when you walk. You would walk past the living room first, where you would see a picture of her mother, and you would go through a corridor, and there was like this great room and a long table because she was always so open. No matter who wanted to join her, who wanted to be a part of the family, she was that person. And walking past the corridor, to your left, you could see the backyard. And she had a green thumb, so she would make us eat squash that I did not like eating. And walking past the window and the table to the right is actually her door. And she actually, now that I think about it, she leaves her room exactly how, or she leaves things on the door exactly like my mom does. It's a habit. And the reason why it hit so hard was because, as I said before, she was our support. My mother was raised by her grandmother. So my mother lost a mother in that moment. And on her door, it was like a blue and purple muumuu that she wore to bed, and just like different varieties of muumuus like kind of hanging on the door. And then she slept on a twin, and she would watch her stories before bed and things of that sort. And she was there. She was resting peacefully. So we know she went peacefully. But she had also had a couple of hard years after my great-grandfather passed away. It's kind of like, for me, I 100% believe that once you lose like a loved one or your purpose or somebody that's been with you for so long, a little bit of your fight goes away. And when she signed that DNR, it was kind of like clear that she was okay with where she was going. So she lay there peacefully, and she didn't, like, obviously didn't have a smile on her face or anything. But my grandmother's hair was like really, really curly. And she, like, it was like this jerry curl, honestly. It was so black, like Eddie Murphy. But people would just come through and say their condolences, because when you have a DNR, your body goes straight to the morgue. So her body went straight to the morgue. And at that moment, I vowed to never love again. And I loved my grandmother unconditionally. My great-grandmother. She loved with no boundaries. She supported with no, extra steps. And she was just that woman. Like, she really was. I didn't think I was going to get emotional. But I vividly remember that moment because I was in the 7th or 8th grade. And I was going to a private Christian school. So we all went to different schools. My older brother went to a different school. My younger brother, my older brother went to Edmond Public Schools, which was like 45 minutes from our house. So a lot of times, he stayed with friends and he went to school there. I went to a private school. My younger brother went to a charter school. And then my younger sister and brother, they stayed with their dad. So it was kind of like back and forth and up to them. And then my youngest sister, she just went to a public school. But I vowed at that moment, I was like, when I play basketball, it's going to be my next game is going to be dedicated to my grandmother. Just like Kobe, he's 60, whatever. It doesn't matter. I obviously didn't hit 60 in a middle school game, and I wasn't about that life because I didn't practice like that. But in that moment, I remember vividly nothing mattering. I remember vividly being so set on being nonchalant, I will not ever love again. But now that I look back on what love meant then and what love means now, I'm like, what has changed? I think what has changed, and I want to absolutely hone the essence of, is the fact that grandmothers knew us, and grandmothers really, really kept the family together. But not only did they keep the family together because that was their persona, like that was their thing, but they kept the family together because they knew something about each and every person, and they made it a point for them to feel special. That is something that no one can replicate out of fakeness, out of, you know, delusion, obsession, none of that. So my family knows, oh my gosh, my family knows that I love collard greens. And I could literally eat a whole pot of collard greens. And my great grandmother knew I loved. So she would always cook me a pot of collard greens. And I look back on those moments and I'm like, how many times did she have to watch me tear up them collard greens on that plate to be like, Netta loves collard greens. Let me do this for her without her asking me, because that's my love language. And like the vegetables in Thanksgiving is so good. Like the meat really should not even be a topic of conversation. I'll eat all the sides in Thanksgiving, and that's the only time like I could believe that I could be a vegetarian, until you realize that in those collard greens there's bacon. And those collard greens, you know, they might have used bacon grease. And some people put meat in their mac and cheese, but I guess that's like a casserole. You put, I mean, like black people put bacon in everything. Some people put bacon bits in their mac and cheese. I can't even think of any of the other things right now. But yeah, so in thinking about my grandmother and why I felt so accepted by her, it brought me back to our brand and how one of the things that I'm working on to improve the overall brand message and connection to others is sales. And in that sales process, I want you, or I want to get to know you and what exactly you foresee this being. And now that I think about it, there will be several times in which I need to watch you, connect to you, get to know you on a different level, or all these various things before you realize like how special you are. And just like my grandmother's loving, it will make you feel warm and a part of a community. So I wanted to come on today and just really talk about how I lost my love and how I translate it into something that I use and I leverage now. And I know how that feels to be connected to one person and accepted by one person and feel purposely driven by one person and really get there. Because sometimes all it takes is one. So yeah, I'm going to be coming on these next couple of days and sharing it live. And if it's late or whatever, that's just what it is. But thanks, guys, for hopping on with me today. Get some rest tonight and have a good rest of your day. Deuces.